I liked it all right, but I had to get out and earn a little bread. I had to get out and earn a living. Oh, what do I remember most about my childhood? Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, if you want to.
Steve McQueen had outbursts about he had lawyers measure his movie posters and counted each speech line. Screen time because he detested having to share the limelight with a specific A Hollywood legend's animosity became so intense that the crew had to keep them apart. While viewers believed they were friends in between takes, the reality was far more sinister. We finally know who McQueen couldn't tolerate after 40 years, and this is the final as one might anticipate. Steve McQueen was born in Beech Grove on March 24, 1930. Indiana, but his life was painful from the beginning because his father was only a few months after meeting his mother. The stunt pilot left. She was young, unstable, and a heavy drinker. By the time Steve was 3, he had previously abandoned and relocated to Missouri to live with his grandparents. Money was scarce and the nation was in the midst of the Great Depression when they soon relocated once more, this time to his great-uncle Claude's property. Oddly enough, the farm became the only place where Steve felt comfortable during such a difficult period in America. On his 4th birthday, Claude gave him a red tricycle to keep him safe and well. Even though it was a straightforward present, Steve grew fixated on it. With speed, and that tricycle marked the start of a passion for racing that would last a lifetime. Not only was Claude a good man, but he also became Steve's first father figure. When Steve was 8 years old, Claude gave him a gold pocket watch with an attribute to Steve, my son, that the watch remained with McQueen for even after becoming a well-known movie star. He carried it with him for the rest of his life as evidence that someone had genuinely loved him. But once Steve returned to Indianapolis to live with his mother, everything changed when he was 8 years old and had trouble hearing because his stepfather had ear infections and dyslexia, which prevented him from reading effectively. Violent, and Steve's house became into a terrifying place where he frequently fled. Began running afoul of the law, and by the time he was 9, he was living on the being a member of a gang and robbing to make ends meet. His mother kept sending him away and pulling him back till she eventually relocated him to live with her in Los Angeles. The worst part occurred when Steve received yet another, much more violent, stepfather. When he was found collecting hubcaps, his stepfather severely abused him, throwing him down as Steve stared up the flight of steps without crying and remarked icily, "You lay or I'll kill you if you get stinking hands on me again." That was the moment. When Steve was 14, his stepfather persuaded him to quit being fearful. A court transferred him to the Boys' Republic in California after his mother deemed him unsupportable. It was difficult in the school for problematic boys. Steve was placed in solitary 5 times. Something about the location stuck with him even though he didn't fit in and didn't follow the rules. When he violated their privileges, the other guys beat him up, but gradually he began to learn. Discipline, nothing without labor, was the school's slogan, and for the first years after becoming famous, Steve finally started to grasp structure. Never forgot the support he received from Boys' Republic. He established scholarships, donated funds, and returned frequently to speak with children, just as he had done when he was 16. Steve left the Boys' Republic and relocated to New York to live with his mother, but he became restless and met 2 merchants instead. Marines, and after boarding a ship bound for the Dominican Republic, he leaped ship and took odd jobs, like as one at a brothel, but he drifted after a short time there. Throughout the United States, he sold pens wherever he could and slept wherever he could. In Canada, circus workers cut lumber, worked on oil rigs, and even ended up in jail after he spent 30 days with a chain gang after being arrested for vagrancy. Gave him the quiet toughness that would eventually characterize his on-screen presence in 1947, but it also made him even harder. Decided to change everything when he was just 17 years old and got his mother. It was a shock to his system to sign the paperwork to enlist in the Marines. Steve survived the harsh boot camp at Paris Island, where he was given an armored regiment and acquired tank operating skills that subsequently enabled him to execute his own stunts in Hollywood. Possessed a natural aptitude for mechanics, but his negative outlook got him in problems. He was demoted 7 times. Went undercover for 2 weeks to spend time with his lover, was apprehended, and was placed in military prison, but something clicked. Steve became aware that he was ruining his own future when he was in the cell. When he got out, he began to become in shape, and his pivotal moment occurred in 1950 while the ice beneath his tank cracked during a military training exercise close to the Arctic Circle, and without hesitation, Steve risked his life to save 5 Marines from drowning. Life repeatedly, for which he received praise and was placed in the. When the president departed the Marines in 1950, he was no longer only a member of the exclusive honor guard that guarded his yacht. He was a street boy who had overcome death, gained respect, and demonstrated his. Almost 2 years later, he enrolled in acting classes using just $800 of his GI Bill funds. James Caan and other future celebrities attend a school in New York. Steve McQueen started a new chapter with Suzanne Plessette, but he was unaware of it. In 1958, however, he made a choice about a low-budget horror movie that would follow him for the rest of his life. Refused a 10% profit share in favor of a one-time payment of $3,000 to star in The Blob. The movie, which only cost $110,000, made $4 million at the box office. He could have left with almost nothing if he had accepted the profit offer. Instead, he received a flat check for $400,000, losing out on a little fortune. He got a part in Wanted Dead or Alive that would define his early career that year. Wasn't intended to elevate a bounty hunter to a hero, but McQueen altered that. The show went for 3 grueling years, and his character Josh Randall was unique. McQueen learned discipline from the approximately 100 instances over the course of 3 difficult, mother-grabbing years. Later stated, but the show turned him into a celebrity. While riding that initial wave of fame, McQueen gambled on a brief yet impactful Alfred Hitchcock episode. He portrayed a reporter in a human interest story who was interacting with a man who claimed to be a Martian, and it was one of the most well-known plot twists in the show. The majority of people were unaware that Clint Eastwood was uncredited in the background. Only a few months later did the 2 future legends appear together on television. McQueen returned for a new episode of Man from the South, and this one was genuine. If his character was unable to ignite a cigarette lighter 10 times in a row, the stakes would. Neela Adams, McQueen's real-life wife, was portrayed by Peter Lorre as the antagonist in Lose a Finger. At the conclusion of the episode, the wager is cancelled, and McQueen nonchalantly flicks the woman caught in the middle. When once again fails, he barely avoided being mutilated, and viewers sense the calm down before all of this. Even though McQueen had been working hard in little roles he appeared on television in a variety of shows, including the United States Steel Hour and the Goodyear Television Playhouse. Appeared with William Shatner in the legal drama The Defender, which followed the success of 12 Angry Men. Already see the fire within him, which appears placid on the outside but is fierce beneath these. He gained the foundation he needed to carry full-length films by appearing in Climax the Big thanks to the accumulation of little gigs. Narrative and the West Point Story, one after the other, all leading up to something. When he joined the Magnificent Seven in 1960, something even greater arrived. Wasn't Yul Brynner's lead, but McQueen made sure he received attention at every. When Brynner talked, McQueen made a change to his headwear and played with his rifle. Brinker allegedly warned him that his belt had moved just enough to steal the scene, stating, "All I have to do is take off my hat and you vanish." However, the film turned into a box, regardless of how well the chemistry worked. Office success and a classic Western earning about $10 million on a $2 million budget. McQueen was permanently on the big screen and no longer only a TV personality. Next, in 1963, came The Great Escape, which included the motorbike jump that turned McQueen became a legend by portraying the defiant American Captain Hilts. It was his friend who did the stunt and not him who leaped over the barbed wire barrier. McQueen performed the majority of the riding, including sequences in which on The Tonight Show, he portrayed both himself and the German soldiers who were pursuing him. He received praise for the jump from Johnny Carson, and McQueen, who is always honest, responded, "It wasn't me." His candor made him even more adored, and he took first place. Suddenly, while performing at the Moscow International Film Festival, he wasn't just an later that year. The American celebrity who became a global phenomenon tried something. He was paired with Natalie Wood in A Different Love with the Proper Stranger. Romance drama with strong themes of unintended pregnancy and abortion. A jazz pianist who discovers Wood's character is pregnant is portrayed by McQueen in 1963. Critics applauded his performance following a one-night stand, and he received his first. Wood received her third Oscar nomination off-camera at the Golden Globes. Allegedly fell deeply in love with McQueen, and the on-screen chemistry helped. Though when the movie made almost $6 million at the box office, McQueen intended to demonstrate that by 1965, this movie had helped him prove that he was capable of more than just acrobatics and weapons. In The Cincinnati Kid, McQueen was playing at the peak of his abilities as a young poker hustler, maintained a stony poker face while attempting to defeat an experienced pro. Would turn into one of his signatures. The film was successful and created more than $7 million, followed by Nevada Smith's gritty. McQueen portrayed a half-Native American, half-white man in The Revenge Tale who observes after his parents are killed. He turns into a killer and even allows himself to detain specifically to obtain a better look at one of the murderers. Steve McQueen's becoming a Hollywood superstar required more than simply charm or coolness. It required risk tolerance and unwavering determination. He gambled with the sand in 1966. In the 1920s, Pebbles portrays a tired sailor serving on a gunboat in China. Wasn't your average McQueen job. It was lengthy, politically charged, and emotionally charged. Filled with comparisons to the Vietnam War that drew viewers' attention. He was so exhausted by the shoot that he didn't work for a while. But the effort was worthwhile as the movie received 8 Oscar nominations, and when McQueen received his sole nomination for Best Actor, it was a milestone in his change from action star to serious actor, followed by the arrival of Bullet. Bullet reminded everyone in 1968 that if the Sand Pebbles demonstrated that he could act, he was 10 minutes of thundering motors and a car pursuit. Still, the king of cool San Francisco's winding streets were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. A black Dodge was being pursued by McQueen in a dark green Mustang as they raced through the city. Charger, he drove alone approximately 10% of the time, but the scenario was unimportant. Changed the rules because the cars, the speed, and the danger were genuine. True, at one point, McQueen had to be dragged back after almost hitting a cameraman, but the outcome was legendary, raw, without CGI. Strength and bravery, McQueen demonstrated that he was more than just a rebel in the Thomas Crown affair. He traded in his worn-out trousers for high-end clothes, and in the $2,250 Pate Fipe watch, he portrayed a wealthy man who stole banks for fun. It was a chic, sensual movie that revealed a new side of McQueen. Was playing chess with F.A. Dunaway and not hurling punches or destroying cars. Executing heists as if they were a kind of art behind the scenes. He also had more control by promoting the film's distinctive visual style and serving as an uncredited producer. He had desired a job that defied convention, and in 1969, he succeeded. In The Reivers, McQueen continued to develop as he portrayed a tough Southern character. Boone Hogenbeck was a light-hearted person who steals an automobile for a fun journey. Based on a Faulkner novel, the picture had darker tones and won him a Golden. Presented viewers with Rhett Cross, the first black actor to receive a Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. it wasn't a particularly spectacular film, but it once again demonstrated Lemon arrived after McQueen's range, and this was meant to be the final. McQueen's ideal project was a racing movie, but it ended up being a nightmare. The budget blew up when they began filming in 1970 without a completed script. 2 drivers were gravely hurt when the director and authors battled. When the IRS demanded $2 million in overdue taxes while filming, McQueen had to sacrifice his income and earnings in order to keep the movie going, and when it was eventually released, critics criticized it. Almost destroyed him, but McQueen quickly rose and returned with a bang. Sam Peake, PPA, and McQueen directed the violent action movie The Getaway in 1972. Taking a huge risk by foregoing his pay and keeping 10% of the revenue instead of the gamble paid off as the film became a huge blockbuster, grossing nearly $36,000 million. It served as a reminder that McQueen was still capable of. In order to satisfy public demands, McQueen had emerged as the world's most bankable celebrity. For the soaring firestorm, he mediated an historic agreement that brings $1 million up front and a portion of the earnings to approximately $12 million, or $76 million, was his total payout. Million today, he requested equal screen time and didn't just accept the larger salary. The movie was a box office success after spending time with co-star Paul Newman and revising some of the script to balance their roles. Ever the perfectionist, McQueen insisted on performing many of his own stunts. However, he disappeared after the imposing fire was a huge success in 1974, and Steve McQueen was at the peak of his. Eventually, he had every door in Hollywood and was the greatest paid actor in the world. Open, but he chose to do something nobody could see instead of surfing the success wave. McQueen left the acting profession, as was to be expected, and vanished for nearly 4 years. He didn't take on roles he didn't care about or do interviews at all. He was more interested in motorcycles than in scripts or studios. Although other celebrities pursued more renown, McQueen traveled in a motorhome filled with his vintage Indian motorcycles. Raced under the fictitious identity while driving across America away from the cameras. Harvey Mushman did not do it for fun, he did it merely to maintain a low profile. Was sincere when he competed in tough off-road races like the Mint 400 and the Baja 1000. And the Elsinore Grand Prix. But he was already familiar with this, and he had previously established himself in the British Touring Car Championship in 1961, and then he almost won the 12 Hours of Sebring in 1970 despite having a fractured foot. He was so devoted to racing that he was inducted into the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame, and he made his cinematic comeback in 1978 with An Enemy of the People. Few people were aware of McQueen's other side, which was that he had a soft spot for the track and the cameras. Boys Republic was a reform institution that provided him with assistance when he had nothing. He was sent to when his life was at a standstill as a youngster, yet something about that school stayed with him even after he became well known. He never forgot it. In fact, when Hollywood believed he was just being challenging when requesting a ton of free items, such as trousers and razors, and they were unaware that he was sending all of his film contracts to Boys Republic. Didn't merely give items, he would come see the students and let them play pool and share tales. In fact, the school established a game room in his honor. Fans continue to congregate there each year for the Steve McQueen Friends Car and Motorcycle Display, which features some of the cars he truly owned, and the 2025 event will carry on the tradition. Scheduled at the end of May, despite the fact that he passed away decades ago, his presence is still felt, but McQueen's return to his personal life while racing was dissolving his union with one of the greatest talents of the 1970s, Ollie McGra. When they first met while filming The Getaway, it was hot and quick. She claimed in 1971 that she was immediately taken to him and that his eyes were like lightning. Following her divorce with producer Robert Evans, she wed McQueen in. At first, 1973 appeared to be ideal, but soon flaws started to appear. McQueen's upbringing without loving parents caused her a great deal of suffering. He pressured her to quit her job after they started dating since he didn't want her to continue working. He was envious when her acting career took off following Love's story. Demanding loyalty from her yet being